Welcome to Improv Your Parenting, the art of turning parenting into play. Today we're joined by Erica Marx, the leadership coach, facilitator, and process designer who helps groups build trust and collaborate across differences. She specializes in inclusive, multi-stakeholder facilitation and brings the same skills into parenting, listening fully, creating structure, and staying responsive in the face of strong emotions and shifting priorities. You can learn more about Erica and her work at ericamarxcoaching.com. Erica, thank you so much for joining me today. Give me a little bit of background about how you use improv in your interaction with kids.
Okay. Being a parent mandates you to be very present, right? Because I introduce my kid, I'll ask questions about what are you thinking about, or what are your thoughts about this that happened either in the past or the future, and zero interest. So it brings you back to look, a squirrel, look, this fabric or whatever. It's like we are in this moment right now. So therefore, all improv principles apply in terms of get here right now with me, pay attention, be curious, join me in this moment. In the long run, those become my most cherished memories of being a parent. When we're looking in each other's eyes and we're jumping up and down in the pool, my adult brain will be like, I don't know, I'm so often thinking about the future or the bigger picture or the meta-analysis. The cherished moments are those in the moment moments.
Can you tell me a story about one of those moments where you realized, oh, this is cool. This is the right thing. I'm feeling good about this.
I remember one time my kid, we were lying in bed and he wanted to play the game of watching a movie together. I'm looking at the ceiling and thinking, let's set the scene. What's the relationship? And he's, Mom, can we just watch the movie? What he wants to do is watch the movie.
Playful.
I'm like, we'll just watch movie.
It's funny you mentioned getting out of your adult brain to be in that moment. Is that something you often find yourself struggling with, that tension between I'm the adult, I'm the parent, I need to think ahead, we got to go at 3:00 for the bus or whatever, and this is what this kid needs right now?
Besides all the times, Jeremy, I think of a more nuanced answer to that. Yeah. Struggling with where am I? What does this kid need right now? Especially when he was younger, the way to get what I wanted as an adult to get out the door is join him in play.
Yeah.
And put the energy in. I often thought of it as I put the energy in to join him there, then we can do anything. We're getting out the door because now it's a game. As he gets older, that's where I struggle a little bit more. Like he's 12 now. How much to be like, no, mom doesn't always just put in 8 times as much energy to make it fun, because the rest of the world wants you to be able to respond to just verbal, it's time to go. It was easier when he was younger because it feels like the only thing to do is join them and make it fun. But now it's like this bridge time.
I'd love to dive a little bit more into that in terms of how that interaction has evolved as your child has aged, as they've grown from being a toddler to now a 12-year-old. How has that changed how those interactions take place?
I think, when the kids are toddlers, right, there is no pulling them into the adult world. It's not an option. What are you going to do? It is the moment, right? You're manipulating the situation, right? You're like putting something attractive over here and then they move over there. You're controlling the scene. This is not improv, it's whatever. But now, and it's also who my kid is, right? He is very strongly in the moment. So right now, it's really a puzzle of, is he genuinely lost in the moment, which is delightful when there's time and space for it, or is this something I should be coaching him in how to read the situation and be like, it isn't the time to get out the silly putty and go get lost in the silly putty. Like literally, we were just talking about putting on your socks because we have to be in the car in 2 minutes. So is that information gone? Right now, this is very personal to my kid and my parenting. How much is my kid and what he's actually capable of? Like I was saying earlier, toddlers, there's a capacity and how much of it is maybe I failed. Maybe I did too much accommodating and playfulness. But what I like about it now is that we can talk about it.
What are those conversations like in terms of his response to your attempt at play, your attempt at that kind of interaction, your attempt at being in the moment with him?
So now he loves it when I'm in the moment with him. What he doesn't like is when mom's being silly. So I get a lot of mom, little silliness in the morning. Doesn't want me doing pretend things. He still would be a sucker for, I'm going to be the first one out the door.
Yeah.
But the whole mom's making a song out of it. Mom's acting out a character about it. Mom's like that.
It's too much.
On the weekend, mom. Not first thing in the morning, not like no singing. There's a lot more rules.
It sounds like there's sometimes a sensory component to that for when you said on the weekday. So it's when stuff needs to be done by a time. Could a sensory component be, I can't take that right now?
That's what he'll say. He's just more adult. I guess it does track more to what an adult partner would say. Not for my coffee. Right. And he is very sensory seeking and very loud and very everything. And I have tolerated that for all this time. But now that's a good conversation for me to go have that conversation, because definitely the best time to have that conversation is not in the moment, and be curious about it, because I'm also learning. It's like we have a different calibration now where I'm like, we're a team. Make this easier for mom. Let's be a team. I'm trying to raise like an adult man now. Meet me. Let's do this together. Let's each do something. Making it really concrete is engaging. We have our New Year's thing, getting to things 5 minutes early, and we have a sticker chart. So every time we eat together and get someplace 5 minutes early, we get a sticker, and when you get 10 stickers, you get like a Pokemon. We've only succeeded once, but
hey, you're working on it.
It's fun because it is something that genuinely we both have to put energy into. Yeah. Right? Something I do a lot, which maybe is supposed to be improv, is be very explicit and be specific and be out loud. I will talk to myself about, don't get distracted, stay focused, mom, staying focused. Just parents, you learn that the things you're annoyed at your kids at, you're like, oh, that's me. Either how I am naturally, or it's how I've come to behave. Now we have some joint goals. We both have the goal of being on time. Let's do it, or stay focused. He'll hold me accountable and use the language back to me. I'm very specific about the language I use with him, that it is objectively useful, right? Because now it comes back to me and is helpful.
You brought up a couple of things here that I want to dive into. One is that you're both learning and evolving in that process, and you've realized you're part of that. So it's not just what's going on with him and how do I deal with that? It's what's going on with us and how do we do that? Let me ask you then, as this relationship is growing and his maturity is developing, how have you recognized it's not just the play, it's the seriousness, using the tools of improv to get to whatever it is that you're trying to do together?
How have I recognized using the tools of improv to get what we want to do together?
Yeah.
Okay. One of the big ones is if you're just in the yes and world, like that first beat of yes, like the acknowledgement, the validation, the call response, red ball. And that, like, he repeats himself a lot. And we've talked about that. What if you've said that 3 times? He's like, you didn't say anything. And then, of course, when I'm talking to him, he'll just wait for me to be done. And then he'll say whatever he's talking about. So he doesn't eat either. He doesn't do it. And it's hard. He repeats himself, like almost like he's finding the words again. He'll say exactly the same words again. So it's not like I really have a time to get in there and say it. But when we talk, so we have, that's another of these learning together things of acknowledge. Before you move on, acknowledge. Every time I find something that I can see how we both can be learning it, or we both are doing it, that feels really healthy and fun and pretty good. I think that as far as improv tools, this is core parenting. It makes sense. I hear you. You really want this. You're sad about that. really wanted that. You
Yeah.
care about this. You're really excited about that. You are having fun doing this. The you statements of the yes, like this is, I am 100% joining you in this is your reality. That is like foundational. And it just works at all ages. And here's something else that's true. The bus comes in 5 minutes. And maybe we can do that next Saturday.
So you're building off the agreement in recognizing there's more to this world. We're adding that in together to see how we can have the agreement in that broader space than just the thing that was initially offered.
I think, yes, I'm saying also, agreement, like we're agreeing that this is true.
Yeah.
This is true. I get it. This is so true. And I remember earlier in parenting, I discovered that you can fulfill a lot of emotional needs with an imaginary world. So kid wants ice cream. I'm not going to agree to ice cream, but I'm like, okay, let's make an ice cream sundae together. Okay, I'm adding vanilla. I'm adding chocolate. I'm adding cherry syrup. And then they get so into the fulfillment of being able to add and eat, and that would fulfill a lot of the desire to like, can you drive me here and do this thing?
Yeah.
It works a little bit less
Yeah.
with the ice cream example. I'd have to think about how that works now. I think it's more sincere about, I really get it. You'd really like this. And we've also been going through a divorce. So that's really a place to be like, what's your world? How does it? And he's not going to answer open-ended questions.
I get that.
So
Yeah.
that's the statement part of improv where I say what I believe to be true. And then there's, I either get it or I don't, but we're working with these solid pieces. We were driving. So I live a little bit in the country. Dad lives in a city apartment. We kept the same schedule that we had when we lived closer. We don't live that far apart now, but we used to be in the same building. I'm driving. It's time to go to Dad's, and he's had his boots on. So apparently it's possible. I got the boots on. And then we're driving there, and I was like, you're starting to like having 2 houses, aren't you? And he's, yeah. But I can play with I'm doing my best to acknowledge what is fully true. I can tell by his reaction if I've got it or not. It's my authenticity of really wanting to see the world through his eyes.
It sounds like there's a lot of empathy there. You're wanting to, from his perspective, at least recognize what that perspective is.
I think that's me all over the place all the time. And that's what I want.
You're very empathetic.
That's how I got into improv. I was a volunteer conflict manager, conflict mediator. Like I grew up with I knew leaving my childhood as a teenager, I knew, or in my 20s, I knew my family had no idea how to deal with conflict. Divorce, die. Those were the conflict management strategies.
Wow. Yeah, that worked real well.
Those were basically the top ones in my like family. Love it. But there's no idea how to deal with conflict. So I thought, how do I learn how to deal with conflict? Who knows how to do this? There's this New York State mediation program where they train people to mediate conflicts, and then volunteers do that in family court. They must know how to do that. So I was like, all right, sign me up. And I trained as a mediator, and then I learned how to deal with conflict. And then after a while of doing that, I was like, these skills that I'm using in the room, it's being a really good ambulance driver. It's great. It's important, but it's at the last part of the scene. I could teach the same skills that I'm using in the moment. If I could teach those to the people who are here minus 2 years, maybe they wouldn't end up in the situation. I did teaching. And then the essence of that, when I boiled that down, it was like teach people how to listen to each other, which is the drum I've been beating even in this conversation. Person makes sense, see the world through their eyes. Then I found after doing that a whole bunch, I could teach people to listen to each other. Okay, I hear you, Jeremy. But if they weren't getting into actually the other person's world, they were just like technically listening that you think this stupid thing, but they weren't getting inside of the other person's world. I was like, okay, who knows how to teach people how to see the world through someone else's eyes? Really embody what it feels like to be someone else. I'm like, oh, theater. like actors. Like they literally do that. They go in and they become another person and they make that person make sense and be relatable, and they must know how to do this. But I was like, we don't have 6 months like in a conversation, in a conflict. How do I get people to do that quick? Improv theater, because I knew that it had to be quick. I started following improv. I found the Applied Improv group. I'm like, wow, there's something going on here. I think these are I don't know. They don't know me. And I had never taken an improv class. I watched how people interacted in the Facebook group. They're positive, caring, supportive, fun, doing interesting things in the world. I went to their conference, which was in person. I didn't know anybody. I didn't never take an improv class. I was pumping and dumping milk in the bathroom to be able to go to this conference. I went to my first improv show, and it led me to like way more than just how do you listen and embody someone else's perspective. It became this whole improv. It's all about like, how do you work as a group and how do you support and how do you be creative? And there's a whole lot more than that. That was my original journey. And then of course that's applied improv, right? Then activities, those training activities that teach you how to quickly see the world through someone else's eyes in a way that you pre-assume they make sense. Somehow they make sense. And then you fill in how they make sense. And you practice that over and over again. I already had that intuitively, right? I was like, why are these people in my classes having so much trouble? I'm like, don't you get it? She makes sense. Let me tell you everything she said so far. Let's make up a story that fills in the gap that would make it make sense if someone feels like this. People they couldn't emotionally make that bridge. Then yes. And then I took all those skills. And then improv has all these training exercises to teach you how to do it. And now I can take those exercises out and teach people how to see the world through other people's eyes.
The essence of all of this is to be able to have that vision from their perspective. And if you can have that, then you're like, how do we work together?
And that's what I talk a lot about in applied improv. It's the yes. People look from the outside and they think, oh, I've got to be creative. I got to be funny. They think about the and part. But the sinking into the yes, it's expanding your capacity to be in the yes. That if you're talking about kids, your goal doesn't matter to them. If you ever looked at the world through a toddler's perspective, those toy trains are like this big and it is a different world.
Yes.
So expand the foundation to make sense. Yes, I get it. Oh, I get more. Now there's so much more to work together on, because if you think of like a Venn diagram with like making the circle bigger, there's so much more capacity for overlap because we focus there. That's part of everything for me, I think.
And I think that's the essential component of it too. It's not that you're letting go of yourself. It's not that you're letting go of the things that need to be done, but it's that you're taking on their perspective and then saying, how do we solve this? Knowing and understanding this is where you're coming from.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. Now, as we're maybe that question you asked earlier about transition, it's the like, how can I help him come into my world more?
Becomes two-way.
His world, because I've developed those skills naturally. Responsibility as a parent, can I get him to come into other people's world? How do I support that capacity? That's all the people who are doing social emotional learning games for kids, which I think is one of the most important things kids could be spending time doing.
Yes, I fully agree with that. And it's fascinating too, because as he's growing, his world is changing. And so you're having to change how you get into that world and what you understand when you're in there and see it.
Yeah.
And then two, how you work with him to be able to see your world and understand where you're coming from as well. And so it's a very dynamic environment.
Pretty easy to get. I get instructed if I'm not getting his world. There's some pretty clear signage about that. But what you said about, so yes, that, and how do I, but the skill of the strategy to help him get into my world and not just have mom's world sucks. It's stressful. There's all these rules. There's all these, like, how do I make my world more interesting to him? And I think that's where the sort of parenting out loud, self-parenting out loud thing comes in, where I'm like, okay, mom's going to be focused. Mom's going to go over here. And then if I mess up, I'll be like, Mom got distracted. And he'll be like, Mom.
Do you ever role play and maybe change roles so that he's the parent and you're the kid?
He doesn't like to be the parent. He doesn't want the responsibility of that. I think all parents find that the kids love playing the role where they're the one who has the power, right? So we have a lot of spontaneous bedtime games. It's a way for him to not get Mom distracted into play.
Exactly. Very smart.
But I'm cool with that. And that's transparent at this point. I'm like, oh, you got Mom distracted again. A lot of the games are like, even last night, he was just doing a thing where he would move a little bit and I'd be like, whoa, like that. And he just could play that forever. There's all these different games. There's Mom holds like this and then he escapes and the boss reprimands Mom for not doing a good job. And then Mom falls asleep and he escapes and the boss comes and there's just a lot of games. But yes, it's a very effective. The games tend to be more silly. I'd have to think about it a little bit to think like the meta-analysis of what we're role playing, but certainly he's in control of the games. Like I'm following, even just simple audio call and response. He's not so into copying me. He's into me copying him. Sometimes we call the fair fairy. Like I'll call the fair fairy and be like, hey, situation with parents, is it fair? And he'll play the fair fairy.
Oh, you guys to decide. Yeah.
Sometimes the fair fairy is busy. I'll get put on hold for a long time.
One, that sounds fun. That sounds like great interaction, good time spent together, building trust, building relationship, all of that stuff. And one of the things that I really appreciate about that is that he might not always want to have the craziness you talked about earlier. Not right now, especially if it's early in the morning, just getting adjusted to the day. But chances are he's taking that in. He's learning those capabilities, that interaction, that playfulness. And I imagine that won't be lost. He'll have that going forward, whatever his future holds. Good on you to pass that. I think that'll serve hopefully both of you and many others in his future really well.
I think the playfulness it's important. I mean, that I don't know how that his personality is pretty strong, right?
Yeah.
Like I said, I'm doing a lot of following. The reason we're so physical is because he's so physical, right?
Yeah.
I feel like underneath the playfulness, the only way to play is to be fully present, to really listen, respond, trust, to be heard, to be responded to. Otherwise, it's not fun and it's not play. So I feel like that's the core of being like his home base, someone he can always come to. And I will receive him. I will believe him. I will understand him through his eyes. I am home base. It doesn't mean he's always living here, but it just means and that is what, I mean, someone told me a long time ago, your voice becomes their inner voice when you're a parent. I think that's another reason I've always been conscious about how I talk, but even doing a lot of talking out loud. So he's seeing the thing, I think, whether or not it expresses as playful, I think it's that deeper trust of me and then ultimately trust in himself. I make sense. Face this. I can be present with what's actually happening. I have this honesty with myself and compassion and with myself. And I can expect that in humans.
What a gift between you two. That sounds beautiful. To be able to go into the world as he gets older, more mature and independent, to be able to go in and know, one, he has that safe base in you. And then two, he can trust himself wherever he happens to find himself.
If we're assuming that experiencing that trust in someone else, like it's modeling it, right? He's modeling it for his own way that he's like meeting himself.
I love that. Anything else you would like to add? Anything you think would be like, hey, if you're a new parent or just coming into this space, like what would be the first step? And I think you might have already talked a lot about this, but what would be the thing you would say to somebody who's, I don't know how to do this. What should I do? How can I start?
Like connecting with my kid the image that comes to mind is physicality, right? Just be eye level, get yourself at eye level, look at the world through their eyes. There is a suspended reality when you're in play, right? It can feel scary. I think not, oh, I just always want to play. No, I want to get stuff done. But the only way out is through. Once they trust that you believe in them, everything softens, openness. But I don't know how to sum up one thing.
I think what you put right there is the key element, is really get into their perspective and then share with them and try to really understand and incorporate that perspective into how you interact.
And know that they make sense. My kid even has said to me, sometimes when I'm been a little frustrated about something, at least once or twice, he said, Mom, I'm doing the best I can. He is so sincere and he really is doing the best he can. Sometimes he'll explain the logic of yesterday you said this, so I was trying to do that. You said put my hand on your shoulder when I want to talk to you instead of interrupting. I'm frustrated because everywhere I'm walking, the hand is on my shoulder. But I use that. I think because of the transparency of the relationship, it benefits me and my parenting because then I get the direct feedback.
Yeah.
Instead of hiding it, he's, hey, I'm doing the best I can right here. Or I didn't know that was, did you realize I was joking? He wasn't sure. There's just something so piercing when a kid tells you what's true from their perspective. But I think like you extend that first and you believe people make sense. Everybody, like you make sense, Jeremy. I am the one who's lacking the information.
Exactly.
It doesn't make sense. The reality is this person makes sense.
What a wonderful perspective to then be able to bring into is that they're not doing something to be bad, to be mean or whatever. From their perspective, what they're doing is the right thing to do.
Friends, and then you get to be curious.
Yeah.
Oh, I can tell you a story. Once he was at a school dance in the equivalent of 6th grade. We were in Bermuda. So he's in the upper grade, all littler kids. He got dropped off at dance by his dad. He thought dad was going to stay, but dad didn't stay. Dad left with the other parents. And so he's there. This is a school where there's 14 kids per grade. Everybody knows everybody, right?
Yeah.
I'm at home and I hear this sort of, we're outside and a child is dropped off to me like, you need to talk to you. I'm like, okay, what happened here? And so I said to him is walk me through your thought process. Okay.
Yeah.
So thought process was, I'm at school. There's no adult here to take care of me. That was his perspective. He felt like there was no adult there to take care of him. So what he did was leave the school dance, didn't tell anybody, walked out to the road, walked down the road to the bus stop and waited for a bus, but then no bus came. So then he decided to hitchhike and his 2 nice women picked him up and they brought him home. And his dad is, you need to talk to his child and tell him, wow, the thing he did was absolutely unacceptable. You're a child. Like that one.
Oh my gosh. But yet from his perspective, it was like, I can get home.
Okay. Walk me through your thought process here. I need to find the shortest path to get to my safe adult. So,
Exactly.
Therefore, I invoke the system of how do you get to your adult?
There's a lot to celebrate in that as well.
But it was hilarious. But we were living in Bermuda on an island. It is the safest place you could possibly hitchhike. But still, little kids are not.
What independence and what sort of initiative would be like, okay, I can solve this. I'm going to go take the bus. I'm going to go home and I will be with a parent at that point and the situation will be done.
Right. The situation of a child who's 10 years old straddling in that world where to feel safe, there's this part of them that's so young and tender that I need to feel safe to have an adult.
Yeah.
Part of them that's so independent and not an adult perspective that be like illogical responses to have strangers that I don't know. Like you think they're not strangers that I don't know help me to be adult. That's not scary. And he doesn't have stranger danger in the first place. He is very happy to have adults help him.
Very cool.
But as a parent, to be in the moment and be like, okay, this makes sense. This is just my kid who's like happy to be home, you know? And instead of having the reaction of, oh my God, this is terrible. This is wrong. I can't even deal with this. You should write on the blackboard 100 times. I will just be like, Okay. Yes.
Yes.
What
And
looks
then
good? It is fun. What? Tell me the story.
totally. And then there's opportunities there for learning of, okay, so if that happens again, what are some other choices that can be made?
Parent is coming. Let's play new choice.
So you're at the dance.
Yeah, let's play this. What else could you have done? What else did you consider? I could ask him that. Like, what other ideas?
Yeah.
And then why were those rejected? Right?
Yes. Definitely.
It's just fun, right? Here's another human who, like I say when I teach people about listening, I'm like, and people are like, oh God, why would I want to hear about this other person's perspective? And they're like, they're wrong or they're bad. I mean, there's this sort of, I'm in conflict with them. The last thing I want to do is be like inside their stupid world, right? But I'm like, actually, we pay good money all the time to go to movies that are about someone who's a serial killer. People actually enjoy being inside of someone else's perspective. Favorite things to do.
Yes.
If we can just step out of our own perspective temporarily enough to be like, if I'm not judging and I'm not trying to I'm just being curious and fascinated. In improv, we create that. We create the backstory. But in real life, you don't have to do that. You can just have your curiosity flashlight and be like, oh,
yeah,
that makes sense. And then what did you do? Where did that come from? It's a whole adventure just there.
It's discovery. And you're discovering how to make your life better because you could potentially reduce this conflict. Yeah, which is affecting you in some way that has made you show up here. Yeah.
Like when you asked earlier about that conflict between being the parent and being in kid perspective, you really do need the agility to fully emotionally set aside the one perspective. Oh, this will be good for me. To fully join temporarily there. And then you can Venn diagram it together. But you're only going to be trusted for as far as you can flex fully into their perspective. But if someone can feel that you're trying to see how they see it, you're okay, but how about this?
Yeah.
Will create resistance, softening, and that joining.
That's a really good point. You don't want to stay anchored to your side in order to see theirs. You need to be able to float to theirs, be in theirs, live in theirs. And then later on, you come back and you say, now, how do we put them together?
I'm just thinking in your adult example you gave of if I have conflict with someone, I have to set it all down.
Yeah.
Or as an adult, with another adult, I have to just set it down and go take a deep breath and be like, let me engage all my skills and actually warm myself into the curiosity. I have to suspend my thing.
Yes.
Because I usually think I am right and they're wrong.
And that's not going to help me if I want to understand.
Well, I have to cognitively know it's not going to help me. I just haven't done it maybe enough times to have it feel, that's my goal, is to have it feel so natural that I'm like, well, let me just go over here because they're probably right about something. When I'm in conflict, I'm like, nope, they're wrong. I have to suspend. But you play it enough that the world emerges and then I'm like, oh.
Exactly. Now I realize.
Yeah. So it's making that clean break with
that
my proceed on principle. That's what I learned in mediation. In mediation, the person who's the most upset, they're the person you pour energy into. The person who's reasonable, there's a kid going, I just want to go out one night a week. And the parents, I can't believe that you are so ungrateful and blah, blah, blah. You might think, oh, I just want to shore up the teenager's perspective because the parent's saying such like offensive things. But on principle, they're grounded. They're they're in their power. You have to pour yourself into this person over here who's ungrounded and go, you can't believe that they turned out this way. I spent $400 and I looked for months for this program and I thought that you would really like it and whatever. They'll come into focus as reasonable. I'm just saying that proceeding on principle. And that's what I think improv gives us, is it gives us principle. If I'm negating and I'm like, oh, I'm negating, it gives principle. I have all kinds of stories where where I can't see the reality behind the principle. This just looks like a bunch of wrong.
Yeah.
But I will choose my principles and then I'll be great. That it will come into focus.
we were talking specifically about interacting with kids, but this is clearly relevant and useful far beyond that in terms of just human interaction, particularly conflict resolution, or at least mediation. And fascinating that you've been able to take what you do professionally and bring it into how you parent, and vice versa, probably as well. Some of your parenting experience may at some point turn around and be like, oh, I recognize this semblance of a situation.
Humans. You asked me a long time ago, I think, what would be that advice? When I first became a parent, I didn't know anything about it, right? I had to generate a gap. You know what I mean? I was old enough. I wasn't doing copy paste parenting. It was like parenting by Google autocomplete. I had these vague things. I'm like, oh, there's like tough love. Or I had these these things. I'm like, oh God, well, who do I have to be as a parent? What do I need to learn? Yeah. And so it just took a little bit of reading, looking around. They're just people. All the same skills apply. So it's because that tough love idea and these other things sounded really hard. But that would be the advice. They're just people. Everything applies. Everything, what they're going through is the same thing that you're going through. My kid's procrastinating. I'm procrastinating. What works for procrastinating? How do we do it? It's the same thing. So I think you've highlighted the teamwork, but it's because we're all just humans doing the best we can.
Doing the best we can. Maybe that's it, is we're all just people doing the best we can. Let's try to do it together to make it easier.
Understand each other, see each other's perspectives. So then there's the basis of supporting each other.
Totally.
I get it.
Erica, this has been such a wonderful conversation. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk with me, for sharing the story with you and son and in your lived experience. I think there's a lot here that other people can find value from. And so I look forward to being able to share it with them. And I appreciate your sharing it with us.
Yes. Thank you, Jeremy.
You.